We're going to move right now to the big story. All right, our big story today is, as I just said, the Colorado River and the decision that has come down, and we're actually going to brand this running dry, as we usually do. This is our coverage of all of the drought, all of the Colorado River incidents, the issues, all of that we've been following here at 12 News. And the decision came down today. It's called the Record of Decision. Now, we've been waiting for this, frankly, for years. It's been a long time coming. This is the final decision of what is going to happen with the Colorado River moving forward. The agreement that governed the Colorado River expired a while ago, and it's been kind of kicked down the road for a little while. Now, this decision is what's going to happen. And a lot of officials in Arizona were kind of nervous about this whole thing, how this might come down, because there was a worst case scenario where Arizona would have massive amounts of cuts to the Colorado River water. Thankfully, supposedly at this point, we are not getting the nightmare scenario, but we will see how that shakes out. We've got our experts. We're going to talk to you in just a second. We're joined by Bram Resnick right now. Bram, thanks. You and I have been covering water for a while. It's as much a political issue as it is a turn on the tap issue. This thing came down just in the last 20 to 30 minutes or so, and already some people are starting to react to this, I think.
The reaction is coming slowly. We still haven't heard from Arizona's top water official, Tom Boshotsky, runs the Division of Water Resources, Department of Water Resources, nor have we heard from Katie Hobbs yet. But I think I want to underline for folks, this is a historic moment for Arizona and water. This moment has been coming. Nobody is surprised by this. The decision today, though, it's important to note, does accept the offer deal Arizona made with California and Nevada to divvy up water short of what the feds wanted. So it appears that what the Bureau of Reclamation has done is given Arizona what it said it wanted. You guys came up with your three-state plan. Here you go. Off you go. At the same time, Arizona in particular is still very upset. People here, city of Phoenix, still very upset that the so-called upper basin states, we're in the lower basin with California and Nevada, the upper basin states, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, and
Wyoming.
Wyoming, thank you. Oh, sorry.
We've been covering this for so long,
Always
we got it down
Wyoming.
pat, but you always forget that there's one at the top.
So the lower basin, including Arizona, is very upset that the upper basin is taking no hit at all. None at all. That's been an ongoing source of friction. It will continue to be a source of friction as we go forward. So what do these cuts mean for you, water users? The mayor of Phoenix last week and the water director of Phoenix laid out the plan ahead. Nothing dramatic to start with. However, this is a kind of break the glass moment. You may know we have a water bank, the Arizona Water Bank, that has stored millions of gallons of water. Every year, Phoenix takes a portion of the allotment it gets from the Colorado River and puts it there, banks it for the future. Well, the day has come when Phoenix is going to need that water. And so the plan is to withdraw some of that water from the water bank to help tide Phoenix over while the city deals with the shortage of water from the Colorado. And we should add, this doesn't end things.
No, not at all.
Not
which
even close.
Is a good segue into our guest, which is Sarah Porter from the Kyle Institute over at ASU. Sarah, you've been on our air quite a lot of times talking about water. You've become our go-to expert in all things water. What is your reaction reading, admittedly, the first draft of this? What is your reaction reading this record of decision?
What Bram said. It is largely what we have been expecting, and there's been some concern that maybe the Bureau of Reclamation would announce a decision that didn't follow what had been offered by the lower basin. So it's a little bit of a sigh of relief that it's what we expected. At the same time, we're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination.
Not at all. And one of the interesting things that I've seen coming out of this is how much we're actually going to cut. Now, the nightmare scenario was, if I remember this correctly, 3 million acre feet. It looks like by my math, we're giving up about half of that. 1.5?
Yeah, what the lower basin has offered is to take cuts plus conserve. So the cuts are add up from the lower basin states 1.5 million acre feet. And then there is an effort to conserve an additional up to 700,000 acre feet. That conservation will be voluntary and some of it will be compensated. And it won't, I think something to point out that's huge for Arizona is that California is agreeing to take a significant cut here for of 10% of its Colorado River apportionment out of priority, regardless of the fact that it doesn't have to take that cut. In other words, this helps ensure more water for Arizona and especially for the Central Arizona project users. Those are the, people from Phoenix to Tucson who get their water from the Central Arizona Project Canal, um, who are junior, who would be taking a much bigger cut were it not for California's voluntary participation.
If you've been watching the 11 before, you would know, viewers would know that we've talked about water before and water law. We've had Rhett Larson, your colleague over at ASU, on to talk about water law also. It is one of the more complicated subjects. You've got first in water rights, you've got senior water rights, you've got tribes that are in there, you've got private stakeholders, you've got everybody, you've got multinational agreements. Mexico gets some of this water as well. To divide that up is incredibly complicated. And the negotiations did not go well. This was not a situation where all of the states agreed on anything.
Yeah, basically there's an impasse, as you mentioned before, between the upper and the lower basin states, the upper and lower basins, and the impasse is really regarding two things. One, the main thing is whether the extent to which the upper basin states have any obligation to make sure that a certain amount of water gets to the lower basin. And what is that obligation? There's huge disagreement over that. And the other is on the upper basin's um, refusal to agree to cuts as part of how we go forward. So we are at a place where we don't have a seven-state agreement. We have historically had a seven-state agreement for what to do in this kind of situation, how to operate the system. We don't have that now. So instead, the federal agency, the Bureau of Reclamation, has announced sort of guidelines, what it could do. They've sort of said, this is what we have the authority to do. And that's where you get those worst case scenarios. The lower basin submitted a proposal which they've agreed to implement, but it's all kind of conditioned on as long as the reservoir elevations stay up where they're needed to produce hydropower.
Sarah, it's Bram. The state has set aside millions of dollars for a potential lawsuit. Is there anything you read in this final order that you think would trigger a lawsuit?
Well, the state's objection to the environmental impact statement has to do with the scope of the authority that the Bureau of Reclamation has outlined we should say in the record of decision, in the thing it issued today. And I would say that nothing about what was issued today would change the state's inclination to challenge what the Bureau says it can do. So I'd say, to the contrary, there isn't anything that would make it less likely that Arizona would bring an action to challenge the Bureau of Reclamation. There's another action lurking in the background, which would be a much bigger deal, and that would be if Arizona and/or other lower basin states uh, demanded water from the upper basin in accordance with how the lower basin states read the Colorado Compact. If that were to occur, we would have a great big seven-state fight in the United States Supreme Court. So both of those legal actions are possible.
It may very well end up in court for a very long time. I want to play a quick soundbite from Governor Katie Hobbs, what she said about the whole negotiating process just a few days ago.
A Colorado River future that puts all the cuts on Arizona, that the upper basin doesn't take any cuts is not acceptable. And we've made that clear. We've asked for the federal government to step in and help to broker a deal. It's clear that that leadership is needed because the upper basin has refused to move.
And in the past, this was one of those situations where this was almost, I don't want to say a gentleman's agreement, but it was something that you knew you had to come to an agreement on. You told me this a while back, that this was always agreed upon so that the federal government wouldn't have to step in. Obviously, that is an attitude that was thrown out a long time ago.
Right. And there's kind of a technical issue here, which I think is important for people to understand, and that is that the lower basin states get all of their Colorado River water from Lake Mead, and the Federal Bureau of Reclamation controls deliveries from Lake Mead. Upstream of that is another massive reservoir, Lake Powell, and the Bureau operates Lake Powell. But in the upper basin states, many water users don't take their water from a federally operated reservoir. And so the Bureau has limited authority to enforce cuts in the upper basin. Some of the water users take their water from a non-federal reservoir. Some of them take their water directly from the tributaries in the Colorado River. So it's more difficult than meets the eye for the Bureau of Reclamation to impose cuts on the upper basin. By the same token, this is a point of very deep division between the upper and the lower basin, that the upper basin, they argue, we're taking cuts in real time. When the rivers are low, different lower priority water users don't get to take water. And we do this all year long, particularly during the growing season, in real time. So we're already taking cuts. That's their argument.
And Bram, I know that that's one of the major sticking points is we grow your food. We are a massive population center, and you want us to cut all of our water now?
Sure, and that's a significant issue. I do want to go back. Is Sarah still with us?
Sarah's still here.
Sarah, I want to go back to the possibility of a lawsuit. The Colorado River is in crisis right now. Something needs to be done. Water deliveries are expected in October 1st, I think.
Yeah, beginning October.
Yeah. What could a lawsuit do? Could you put slap an injunction on this order and just have nothing happen on the river?
Well, since the lower basin essentially got the Bureau of Reclamation's agreement that it's going to do what the lower basin has asked for the next 2 years, they probably wouldn't be seeking an injunction. They would be, if the Bureau had said, we're going to cut, much more water than the lower basin had agreed to, then I would expect the lower basin states to seek an injunction. I think to your question, that the Bureau they have no choice. They have to operate the system. So they're going to operate it according to the guidelines that they issued with their final environmental impact statement and finalized with today's record of decision. And, at some point, some of those actions may exceed what the lower basin is willing to tolerate. That's why the lower basin may still bring a lawsuit. That lawsuit could just crank along while the Bureau continues to operate the system. By the same token, if the water deliveries to Lake Mead don't comport with the lower basin's interpretation of the Colorado Compact, I would expect the lower basin states to bring an action to require the upper basin states to deliver water. But again, that lawsuit would happen. That would be this huge, it'd probably take more than 10 years in the United States Supreme Court. It would just go on while we continue to struggle in reality with the conditions on the Colorado River.
And let's talk about that struggle and bring it back to homeowners, people here who rely on water from the city of Phoenix, from our local cities. And if you can't speak to Phoenix in particular, what do the next several months look like now? What do you expect the city of Phoenix to do now in response to this order or decision?
Yeah. Well, The city of Phoenix has been working hard on this for years. And let's start with the fact that about 30% of the water that Phoenix delivers to taps comes from Colorado River supplies. The city has developed alternative infrastructure to be able to deliver alternative water supplies. That is primarily groundwater. That's water that's basically the deep savings account in order to meet demand at the tap. So, what I expect is for the city to implement its plan. They've even tested out the infrastructure that they developed to do this, so they're ready to go. And I expect something similar throughout the greater Phoenix area for cities that rely on Colorado River water.
So I mentioned the water bank earlier, and I called this a break the glass moment. That's the emergency supply. And I heard Max Wilson, the city's water director, talk about that being the short-term backstop. Can you explain how that would work? And did you ever think we would need this water?
It was the water bank was created in the expectation that someday Arizona might need that water. And maybe, it is very painful. It's very painful to tap your emergency savings account. And there are a lot of people who really have a lot of, heartburn about this, but uh, it was foreseen that this we could come to this point. The important thing is this water doesn't replenish. So it's really like using up the emergency savings. And that's why I think it's very, it's going to be tough. In what we need to do while the region falls back on this non-replenishing emergency savings account of groundwater is ramp up alternative water supplies. Phoenix has taken a huge step toward this with other cities. So has Tucson in developing advanced water purification, where effluent is sent to a drinking water plant and with advanced technology treated to, EPA standards. But that won't be sufficient. It may be, but it's not likely to be sufficient, which means that other water supplies will need to be developed also in the meantime. And that means paying more for water. We need
And
to make big investments as a region uh, in order to stay water secure. And I'd say the other thing is it really helps when we reduce water use outside. It helps cities be able to meet demand with the water supplies they have in hand.
yeah, the majority of your water use is outside your house, not inside. And Sarah, you brought us right into what I wanted to do next, which was we have a soundbite from Mayor Kate Gallego from the city of Phoenix talking about exactly that we're not going dry, but your wallet might get a little lighter.
We want to work together so that you can continue to turn on the tap and have the water you count on. We could see the next type of water supply cost 10 times more than the Colorado River. Colorado River has been very cost effective.
Very cost effective, but also not exactly the source that we thought it was, which I want to get to a question from Bram on that also, because this is going to be something that we're going to have to deal with for a while. This is going to cost people money. It's going to cost everybody money.
It is, and we heard Mayor Gallego said, I did that interview, and she said the water we're going to be using could cost up to 10 times more. That's an astonishing amount. We're already seeing some cities absorb that. And Sarah, there was one other point you made, and it gets to what you were saying about recycled water. We're going to need billions and billions of dollars to do this. There was no indication, there has not been any indication that kind of money is forthcoming from the Trump administration, is there?
Phoenix got a little bit of the Inflation Recovery Act money, hundreds of millions of dollars to help, stand up its advanced water purification plant. But you're right, we don't see the administration launching a new program to send billions of dollars to the cities that are impacted by Colorado River shortage. Uh, you know, I think that we will see a more coordinated effort by Arizona's elected officials, from the legislature to the governor to our congressional delegation, uh, that will begin to make those requests. That those requests haven't happened. There hasn't been, uh, a proposed legislation or lobbying for billions of dollars to help cities in Arizona develop new water supplies. But over time, there will be more coordination, I expect. I'll also, note that the legislature funded our and kind of organized our Water Infrastructure Finance Authority so that that agency, it's a state agency, could develop projects to import water supplies to the state, new water supplies for Arizona. While they've had a lot of their funding removed, by the legislature in the last couple of years, they have had enough funding to proceed with identifying water importation projects and do the sort of early stage development of those projects, getting them ready for a NEPA review so that there could actually be groundbreaking on those projects. So there's work being done on many different levels, but yeah, the money's not in place by any stretch of the imagination.
And Sarah, I want to ask, where do we go from here? We've only got about a minute left with you, but what happens next? Is this going to go into effect, or do you think we just straight up challenge this in court and that starts that whole process?
No, I feel certain. I mean, I think it's going to go into effect. I think uh, we have a tiny bit of certainty over the cuts to expect in the coming months. The problem is we haven't even talked about what's happening, with actual water on the reservoirs, but the conditions are so bad right now that if we have another bad winter like the winter we had last year, we could expect even deeper cuts in the middle of the year, in 6 months. If we have a pretty good winter, we could expect deeper cuts next year. So there's no guarantee that the cuts that were announced today will be the only cuts that Arizona experiences. My expectation is, and I could be wrong on this, but my expectation is, even if there is a legal challenge, the guidelines and the operating plan as announced today will be implemented, during the pendency of a legal challenge to the Bureau of Reclamation's decision. So I think we have a tiny bit more certainty, but what really is preventing us from having certainty is that we're at a very precarious point in the reservoirs on the Colorado River, and another bad winter, and it's a whole new world for us. Much deeper cuts.
All right, Sarah Porter, thank you so much for joining us, especially on short notice as this came out. Obviously, Bram, thanks for joining us as well. You're going to have a lot more coming up. You're probably in every show, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10. You're probably in all of them with all of that and all of the unanswered questions.
It's a big deal.
It is a big deal. All right, thank you, Bram, very much.